We will introduce like GitHub as one of the source for the Twindle CLI project. So it is a bit confusing. Let me try to, simplify it a little bit. So for example, in the GitHub, we have lots of good markdown files. So if you see here, there is one Ryan user clean code JavaScript. And if you open this README file, so which will be rendered correctly. But if you see that there are lots of other information which is not very beneficial. For example, GitHub header and the user information, pull request. So after that, it is a bit cleaner. So we can try to. So the user, right, will copy this URL and pass it to our Twindle CLI project. The way they are passing into the thread. So here we have Twindle CLI project. Like for example, we have Twitter. We can create another folder like GitHub, and CLI will call to the GitHub whenever it recognizes like GitHub URL. So basically what we can do, there is no need for API. No need for API to use at this stage. In future, if you face that any problem, then we'll sort it out, but it is publicly driven. If you click on the row, so this URL is, this readme file is markdown file is available for anybody to consume. So by making a simple GET request, we can extract all this information. Okay, so there is no need for any API additional call we need to make. But once we get the content, then the difficulty part arises. It is in the markdown format and it is known as GitHub flavored markdown because it understands GitHub syntax. It is similar to the general markdown, but it may have some specific syntax which is only specific to GitHub. So there may be several. So the objective is that we need to convert this markdown to a PDF file into the A5 format, so that the PDF file, once it is created, it can be it can go to the Kindle. But here, like, I'm a little bit confused about at this stage we have to do something, because inside our renderer part, our Mobi, right, we know that clearly defined syntax. Sorry, not here. Inside the PDF, we know the template. But for this markdown, we may not know the template. So based upon that markdown, our HTML needs to generate automatically, and the rendering part will happen, dynamically. There is no clearly defined structure because markdown itself contains the HTML tag. This pound symbol, that means it is a H1 tag. 2 pound symbol means it is H2 tag. Basically, we can use one npm module which can convert to a pure HTML. And that we can print PDF by our own create PDF mechanism. And we can write our own CSS to style it so that it will look better into Kindle or any mobile device. So from this readme file, we can convert to PDF or we can convert to EPUB format. Let's start with first. Let's start with fetching it the information. So this is the fetching part. So we have several other part also, like how we can render it and how we can convert to EPUB, other thing. So for the parsing logic, right, we can write all the parser by ourselves, but I don't think it is needed, because if you do some research in the GitHub repository, there must be some npm module which already doing the thing. But don't read that directly converting from this markdown to PDF, because the PDF and the only focus on that how it can convert to HTML, markdown to HTML. Once we get the HTML, right, we can do our own CSS styling, so which will give much more control in terms of the way we want to make our own layout. So don't directly look for the library where it will directly convert to PDF. That there are several available, but then it would be difficult for us to customize it. They may give some configuration, but it would be a bit, challenging, I feel like. So in a summary, the user will pass this URL as a npmy module. Like for example, here, like tweet ID we are passing, right? See, when we are running tweet ID passing. So instead of that, you can pass some URL. We can create some other option like hyphen URL, or I'm not sure which of the option you can give. So instead of that, you can pass this entire file. The first step would be to, so they may not give the raw here. They may, usually everybody will give to this GitHub URL. So we have to, because we can't expect user to click on the raw button and give that raw URL, because these two URL are a little bit different, right? So they will give basically this URL. Once the URL there, we can apply some logic. If the github.com is present, then we know that it is a GitHub URL. So we don't need to ask explicitly that is it a GitHub URL or not, because by looking into the domain name, we can figure it out. And they should have to give a file path ending with the markdown. If it is not markdown, we can politely, display some error message saying that you have to specify some file with a markdown extension. And once we get that, we can convert it to this raw file, and it will follow the same syntax. I think the first part we have to just convert into like GitHub to this thing, then it will do automatically. But what I'm trying to say, if you just copy this part and just change it to here, I think this would go to the, I think something wrong. But you got the idea, right? If you see that both will be more or less same, there will be slightly change here and there. Yeah, the blob is missing and other thing. But this particular URL we have to construct dynamically. And then next step would be to fetch this URL. And after that, we have to use some kind of, or if somebody want to write the parser by itself, it is a good learning experience. But to start with, right, instead of using the markdown to HTML parser, I would recommend to use some npm library to convert from markdown to HTML. Once we have HTML structure, we will use our own CSS. Don't use anybody else CSS, it would be difficult to customize it. That H1, H2, we can, once we get the HTML, we can pretty much write any CSS by ourselves. Then once we have CSS, then we can use Puppet or our own approach to create it to PDF. Hope it is making clarity. If you have any question, just drop in the comment below.